So a couple of weird questions to answer first of all in this video. First of all, why am I standing up and why in the thumbnail was I holding what looked like a gun? Well, watch on and you will find out. The second question is, why am I making a video comparing the Quest 2 to the really old Oculus Rift CV1 and then the Rift S? Well, the reason we're doing that, to answer that question, is really very simple. People like myself who have had the Rift CV1 for a while never upgraded, most of us, to the Rift S because it wasn't an upgrade. It wasn't even really a sidestep. If you didn't have a CV1 at the time that the Rift S came out, then buying a Rift S wasn't a bad shout. You didn't have to put up external tracking cameras, the price was good, and it worked reasonably well. But if you were a CV1 owner, you'd already got your CV1, you'd already set your cameras up, you'd had them set up for possibly a couple of years, and we all looked at the Rift S, and what we saw was a headset that had a slightly higher resolution, but that was it. That was the only positive from us as CV1 owners about the Rift S. A slightly higher resolution, which meant a slightly reduced screen door effect, and a slightly sharper image. And that was really it. The audio was worse. The refresh rate was worse at 80 Hertz instead of 90. The controllers were slightly smaller. The battery covers would fall off in your hands under aggressive play sessions. And the inside out tracking at launch was pretty bad. Now a couple of years later, almost 2 years later, it's vastly improved. It's just as good as it is on the Quest, but it's still never as good as external tracking. It's just physics, With external tracking cameras, you can't cover things up so they can't be seen. Whereas with inside out tracking, put your hands behind your back and they can't be tracked. Now, some people will be going, oh, Carl, put your hands behind your back when you're playing games. Well, you do. And this is one of the things we're going to talk about today, and one of the reasons I have a gun. It's a Webley Nemesis, in case anybody wondered, which is an air pistol, something I've had since I was 16 years old, so quite a long time. But I thought it would be very useful in this video to demonstrate those scenarios where tracking occlusion occurs when you are using something that has inside-out tracking. So, yes, going back to what I was talking about. So, the audio was worse on the Rift S, the refresh rate was worse, the controllers were a bit smaller, the covers would pop off, the tracking wasn't as good at release and even now. And for some people, the headset itself wasn't quite as comfortable. The adjustable strap actually was a positive. I like, twiddling the knob at the back is a lot easier than adjusting Velcro straps, so that was a positive. And what else? Oh yeah, also the sweet spot on the lenses just wasn't anywhere near as large as on the original Rift. Meaning if your eyes just drift away from completely central, it just looks blurry. And that's not a positive either. What else was there that changed? Oh yes, no IPD, no manual physical IPD adjustment either. So unless you were around the 63, 64 millimeter IPD, you weren't going to have the best experience. So you can see from that list of mostly negatives, if you're a CV1 owner, there was no point upgrading. And also we're going from OLED to LCD, so the blacks weren't as good either. So it just wasn't, a friend of mine's got a Rift S, well, be a housemate in actual fact. So I spent quite a lot of time using the Rift S, back to back with my CV1, and I would never, ever, ever have changed for a Rift S. It's just, especially having already got a CV1, having it already set up, no point changing whatsoever. So yeah, that's why I'm making the video. Lots of us still have CV1s and might be wondering, is now the time to potentially upgrade to the Quest 2? Now this is going to be from a PC VR standpoint. Obviously we can't compare a standalone headset for standalone purposes against a Rift S and the original Rift because they don't have standalone capabilities. This is going to be from a PC VR perspective. So, yeah, where should we go with this first? So, okay, so let's go through much like I did with the Rift versus the Rift S. Let's go through those specs and those physical differences and see how they stack up. We'll start with the CV1. So in fact, I may as well hold this as a little bit of visual aid, so to speak. So let's go with comfort first of all. Obviously, being a standalone headset, it's heavier because it has an integrated battery and basically a mobile phone, built into this. So it is heavier than a CV1. You do notice the weight. Is it too much? No, it's not. It's absolutely fine. There's no issues with the weight whatsoever. Facial interface is comfortable. I have no real issues with that. As I mentioned in my sim racing review, and this video today for my sim racing community, most of this doesn't really apply to you guys, so feel free to navigate away if you're not interested in what I'm talking about today. This is more of a general VR based review or comparison. So yeah, facial interface is comfortable. Just as comfortable as the CV1. The light leakage I get around here is a bit of a pain. I don't get that on the CV1, but this is down to your face shape, your nose shape, your head shape. So some people might get light leakage and some people might not. We do have a physical Ipd adjustment. There are 3 presets. Thankfully, I am bang on preset number 2, so that's good for me. And other people say you can actually push the lenses in between those 3 preset settings as well to give you a sort of in-between settings. So we've got some form of mechanical Ipd adjustment. It is one panel rather than 2 individual panels, so that's perhaps why it is a little limited compared to, say, the CV1 when it comes to Ipd adjustment. The other thing is when you're on the widest Ipd setting, you lose a touch of your field of view because the lenses are nearer the edge of the single panel. Whereas if you had individual panels, they would move wider and narrower alongside the lenses as well. But it is there. Field of view, may as well talk about field of view next then. The field of view to me, and I had a couple of friends around and we were going back to back with this and the CV1 and the Rift S, doing all sorts of comparisons. Most of us agree that the field of view is pretty much the same as the Rift CV1. I didn't see any more or any less. Again, this will vary a little bit because the closer you have it to your face, your eyes, the wider your field of view. And if you were to have it here, for example, you'd have a really narrow tunnel vision field of view. But we pretty much think it's about the same as the CV1 field of view wise. Sweet spot, the sweet spot on this is very small, just like on the Rift S. And that's definitely a downgrade from the CV1. My one's sat, oh, actually my one's above my head, up there, hanging from a ceiling mount, in case you wondered. The sweet spot on that is much, much bigger than it is on this. Because that's been my daily driver, I'm used to glancing around with my eyes, perhaps looking at my energy or my ammo or whatever it might be. And with this, it is annoying that if you look off center, it goes blurry. You'll get used to it, but it means you've literally got to move your head every time, almost like your neck doesn't move from your body, so to speak, to look at exactly what you want. Maybe not your neck doesn't move from your body, but you know what I mean. You've got to look exactly at what you want to look at, otherwise it is blurry. So the sweet spot's definitely smaller, which is a bit of a negative. Audio, again, same scenario as the Rift S and the original Quest. The audio is very poor from an audio point of view. Again, I said this in my other video, if you're not someone that's into your audio, whether it be home theatre, whether it just be for music, you're probably not going to care. But if you are into your audio and you appreciate good quality, good dynamic range, then you will notice these are sorely lacking in almost all areas. They're quite clear, so there's no issue with audible clarity. They're just not very loud, and the dynamic range is obviously pathetic because they're tiny little speakers. But that's to be expected. Again, same with the Quest 1, same with the Rift S. So what have we covered? We've covered... Okay, so let's talk about image quality. Now this is really where the jump or upgrade happens. This is a much higher resolution than the Rift CV1. Much, much higher. And that is massively evident in clarity. Now, we're talking about PC VR again, so we're talking about using this with virtual desktop and using it with the link cable. Now, for me, at the moment, virtual desktop, in games that run well, the visual experience in this is much, much better than the CV1. Much better. Using the link and virtual desktop in titles that don't work so well, then it looks compressed. Or not so much compression these days, actually, because they've bumped the bitrate up. The resolution looks low. You've got jagged straight lines, and it just doesn't look right. But in the titles that do work really well, for example, Half-Life Alyx looks lovely, really pin sharp. There's no obvious compression over virtual desktop or the link cable. And the resolution, at least through virtual desktop, which is how I actually play it, and we'll get onto why that is in a little while, looks spot on. There's no jagged edges, there's no nothing. It's a really good experience. So that is a big upgrade. And alongside with that higher resolution comes your reduced screen door effect. Now the CV1 is an old headset and it is low resolution, and the screen door effect is one of the biggest problems you get with low resolution headsets. But is it, how can I put this? The screen door effect on the CV1, I'm going to use the phrase noticeable. And when I say noticeable, what I mean is it leaps out and it distracts you, so you notice it. Not can you see the screen door effect if you choose to look for it. That's a different story altogether. You can see a screen door effect on this if you choose to look for it on a white background, for example. So with the CV1, while screen door effect is worse, in most situations, it isn't noticeable. It doesn't leap out and distract you unless you happen to be on a snow-covered, dirt rally stage or a snow level, in a first-person shooter. Then that grid, that visible screen door, it is noticeable. So you definitely don't get that with this. And along with that comes that increased sharpness and overall clarity. But on a negative side, the blacks in this, they're basically grey. It's not black at all, it's grey, as we expect from an LCD panel. So, that's a bit of a downgrade. So, you can see where we're going here. It's a tricky question to answer. Should you upgrade from a CV1 to a Quest 2 purely for PC sort of VR purposes? Because what you're gaining is a much nicer visual sort of experience with crispness and lack of screen door effect, but you're losing your blacks. And at the moment, you can run 90 hertz, but you have to jump through some hoops to do it. At the moment, it's only 72 hertz, really. That will change going forwards. So the audio obviously isn't as good, and it's a real tricky one. So let's talk about the next thing, which is super, super important, and the reason I have a gun in the room. Let's talk about tracking. We're going from outside-in tracking, external tracking, to inside-out tracking. And that inherently means there will be black spots or areas of occlusion where your controllers cannot be seen by the headset. Now, every game reacts differently when that happens. Sometimes your hand might stay where it last was. Other times it will start floating off in the distance. Other times it might appear right in front of your face when it gets lost by the controller, by the headset, sorry. Now, a lot of people say this isn't really an issue, but having been doing some sort of back-to-back testing and playing PC VR games again, it's all about PC VR today, using the Quest, mostly through virtual desktop, I've found a few very specific things that I do all the time that mean the headset loses the tracking of my controller. And that is annoying. And I'm going to demonstrate what they are. And this is why we have a gun, because it's always in first-person shooters that this happens to me. Now, let's say I'm playing Half-Life Alyx, for example, like I was yesterday. If I'm walking up to, let's say there's a door here. If I'm walking up to this door, what I want to do is stand just to the side of it, open it, and peer around and just look through the gap that I've just created. And I do it pointing my gun as I open the door. I don't just walk up, stand straight in front of it, open the door wide, and stand like that in case there's, a load of head crabs in there waiting to jump on me, or some soldiers, or whatever it might be. And the same goes for other first-person shooters like Zero Caliber. You don't just open a door, standing fully in front of it wide to whatever potential enemies are inside. you're going to do it carefully, at least I do. Open it, have a little peek round. So, one of two things happens. If the door is already ajar, then I'll be holding my gun with two hands like this. So the second controller is at the bottom. And I hold it close to my body and I peek like this. Now, as soon as I do that, this controller at the bottom here is occluded by my hand above it and part of my chest. Now, in Half-Life Alyx, when I do that, this hand appears right in front of my face, which is a real pain in the arse. And this is it's just what I do. It's how I peer through. I've got my gun here ready. So if I do see something, bang, 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 I can respond. So that's one situation. And it loses it every single time. It can't be helped because the controller's underneath the other controller and my chest is leaning and my head is looking forward. The cameras just don't see it. The other thing that might be, I might do a similar thing if the door's closed and I walk up and I'm very close to the door, I have my gun at this height and I reach to get the handle and I've got to turn the handle and open the door, and as soon as I put my hand down here, again, it loses tracking and the hand floats or appears wherever it appears. And they both happen almost every single time. You know, especially as you're pausing to do this slowly, because the controllers will be tracked for a few seconds after they go out of camera sight. But if you keep it there for too long, it doesn't know where they are. And so there's two examples there of when that happens. Now, the other times I have it happen, let's say I'm playing Zero Caliber or even Half-Life Alyx again, if I'm walking up to a wall and I want to peer around the wall, I put this left hand behind my back. I don't know why I do it. Maybe it's more comfortable, maybe I feel more balanced. It's just what I do. The wall's here, I walk up and I have my gun here and I peek round the wall like that. I guess it's so my arm's not, if it was real life, I'd be squashing my arm against the wall, which is, you know, awkward. So I naturally put it behind me there and peek round. Again, if I see anybody, bang, 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 you know, and that's how I play. You could approach it like this and step out, but then you're exposing a lot more of yourself versus being snug against the wall and just having a little peek through. Now, you know, you don't have to play like that. You can play, keep your hands out in front of you, make yourself more visible. You can open that door, push it and then stand back. But that isn't how I've been playing and it's not how I like to play. So those couple of examples there are where the tracking gets lost. The third example I'll give you doesn't require the use of a pistol. It would require the use of a rifle if I have one, but I don't. So if I'm playing Zero Caliber, maybe I'm laying down with a rifle. Hopefully the mic won't get squashed when I do this. I'm laying down with a sniper rifle or with any other rifle, and I need to reload. Now in Zero Caliber, your ammo pouch is around your waist. So what I would normally do is just lean to one side, grab, get my, pull the other one out, grab a new one, stick it in. Now, my headset looking forward, and the cameras only have that field of view that they have. As soon as this hand is here, it doesn't know what my hand is doing. So what I have to do is turn my head down with me and look backwards instead of looking forwards where I was previously. So there's a few examples of where inside-out tracking genuinely fails in use, day-to-day, doing things that I would normally do. Now this isn't obviously exclusive to the Quest 2. The Rift S has the same issues. My G2 that's coming is going to have the same issues. It's just the way inside-out tracking works. It can't be helped. But for people that are coming from a CV1 with, I've got a camera there, a camera there and a camera there, you need to know this because it might bother you, especially with the other sacrifices with regards to audio, and the comfort of the strap isn't quite as comfortable as the CV1 either, and then the OLED panel and blah, 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 blah. So it's just things I thought you guys might want to know because it would have been interesting for me to know it if I was making a buying choice about what headset to keep. But let's talk about some positives now. So whilst the tracking can be a problem, and you will have to change your style of gameplay if you played how I play, like I just demonstrated. Aside from that, we've got a better screen, clarity-wise, resolution-wise, and that's a positive. The other positive is this. With this connected to virtual desktop, in games that work well, like Half-Life Alyx, like Zero Caliber, you are free to spin around as much as you want without worrying about a cable getting twisted above your head or getting twisted around your ankles. You know, when you're in the heat of it all, and there's just, for some reason, I naturally find myself turning to the right more. When I use a wired one, if I'm not careful, that's the direction I end up twisting it up in. So, you know, and you can literally, you shoot there, someone's behind you, you can spin around, bang, 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 you can move around, you can do whatever the hell you want, up, down, like, there's no cables wrapping around the legs. When you're up in the air shooting up at people high up, if you've got a ceiling mounted pulley system, your arms catch the cable as you spin round, it catches the cable above your head. You know, it's just not great. I've been using the Quest 2 wirelessly to play these games, and I went back to using my CV1 yesterday for the first time, and it was so annoying to have to use that cable, getting caught around my head. It was just, it's a pain in the arse. So again, the question about whether you should upgrade from the CV1, from the Rift S to the Quest 2 is a really difficult, for PC VR again, it's a really difficult one to answer. If you can get a good experience with virtual desktop and utilise that wireless capability, then I would say, and you play those sort of games, then I would say yes, it's worth doing. Because I don't think I'm going to be able to go back to playing those types of games with a wired headset anymore after experiencing that freedom. You know, instead of snap turning using your thumbstick where you sort of jump 45 degrees or 90 degrees at a time, to be able to just spin around freely and not worry about it, you feel more immersed, you feel more like you're in there versus playing a computer game. I know you can use smooth turning, but smooth turning makes me feel a bit motion sick, so I don't use it. And obviously it still turns at a fixed speed, regardless. It doesn't turn how you turn. So yeah, I don't know if I can go back to playing those type of games using a wired headset. And I think for a lot of people, if you try it, you probably won't want to go back to it either. So yeah, if you can get virtual desktop working well, if you play those sort of games, then I would say yes. I'd recommend using headphones for the audio if the audio bothers you, because it is a bit pants. But I think I would sacrifice the OLED panel and even the external tracking, because the freedom of not having a wire really is very, very good. Now, if you've got a Rift S, most of what I just said still applies. The only things that don't apply are you're already used to having crap speakers. You're already used to having inside-out tracking. You're already used to not an OLED panel. You're already used to an LCD panel. The only difference for you is that you gain wireless capabilities and a slightly higher resolution screen. Oh, and that the controllers are infinitely better than the crappy Rift S ones. So yeah, Rift S owners, better controllers, slightly higher res, and that wireless capability to just spin around, you know, at will. And even I was playing walkabout mini golf the other day with 4 of my friends in multiplayer, which is loads of fun, in case anyone fancies a good multiplayer game. It's only $10.99 as well. And even in that, you know, you're playing mini golf, you think, yeah, you haven't got to turn around that much, but you surprisingly, you do find yourself turning around a lot, whether it's just to realign yourself with the ball or whatever it might be. And again, I was playing, you can get that natively for the Quest 2, so you don't have to go over virtual desktop to do that, which is an even better experience. You haven't got anything, you just turn it on, load it up, and you're good to go. But yeah, I was playing it with my CV1 because my Mrs. Katie was using the Quest, and the bloody cable's just pissed. I have to be aware. How many times have I turned around? Do I need to spin back the other way yet? I use Cable Guardian these days, so I get a beep if I do turn too far. But just having that cable, you can feel it's hanging around your head. You know, you've either got it so it's slightly taut, or you've got it so there's a loop hanging, one or the other. If you've got it slightly taut, you always feel a slight little tug. And if you've got it so there's a loop hanging, then there's a loop hanging and you end up just hitting your head on that slack bit of cable as you move around. None of that happens when you use the Quest 2 wirelessly. So I think, again, with reference to the Rift S and the CV1, if you don't mind the drawbacks, for Rift S owners, there are no real drawbacks because the drawbacks from the CV1, you're already suffering because you've got a Rift S. So CV1 owners, if you don't mind the drawbacks that I've been through, the change of tracking, the audio, the black levels, and at the moment the refresh rate, then getting a good virtual desktop wireless experience is absolutely brilliant and well worth it. Rift S owners, you're just going to gain better controllers, higher res, and the wireless experience. If you want that wireless experience and you're going to play those sort of games, then yes, I would say upgrade as well. If you don't play those sort of games, if you're a sim racer, I'd say stick with your Rift S for now until we see Link finalised. If you're a CV1 owner and you're doing sim racing, then this is a slightly tricky one because you will notice an increase in quality from the higher resolution. But yeah, the Link isn't perfect. Virtual desktop doesn't work well for racing games in my experience. I'd maybe wait until Link is finalised because they've made a big leap up recently with the compression. We just need the resolution to be native and the refresh rate to be native, and that'll probably be a strong recommendation at that point. So yeah, CV1 owners, sim racers, hold your horses for a second. Rift S owners, again, stay as you are if it's just for sim racing. You don't need wireless capabilities when you're sat in a rig. But anyway, this, I think, feels like a bloody long video. 26 minutes. Oh, not as long as I thought, so that ain't so bad. Anyway, I hope some of this has been helpful for you guys, especially my stupid demonstrations of tracking occlusion. It's just something you don't see other reviewers demonstrate much. They're all great at waving, not to put them down, but they're all great at waving their hands around and saying, look, it tracks really well, blah, blah, blah. And the only time you might do that is in Beat Saber. But there are other real world applications like what I've showed you today where you're doing things slowly and tentatively and cautiously, and the tracking can get lost and actually make a difference. Having my hand appear in front of my face when I'm trying to carefully look around through a crack in a doorway is not helpful, you know. But anyway, yes, enough of my waffle. If you want a CV1, a Rift S, or a Quest 2, there will be links for eBay and Amazon, all those bits and bobs in the description if you're thinking about jumping in at any of those different price points, because they're all still a good buy, depending how much you pay for them. If you get them all at the right price, every single one of those headsets, the CV1, the S and the Quest 2, are all well worth having. If you are new to VR, you will not be disappointed at all. So yeah, there'll be some links down there. They help the channel if you use them. You know, that's the reason I put them there, aside from saving you guys a few clicks to navigate to these places yourselves. So as always, thank you very much for watching and take it easy.